is a difference, and an important one, between a revelation and mere repetition. The headlines do not always jibe with the story, or in our fourth story in the countdown, the apparent reality. That CIA documents released yesterday, rather than contradicting House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, in truth offer very little additional information. In recent weeks, the Speaker has addressed this issue, whether she knew all along through classified briefings that the Bush administration was using torture, like waterboarding, and whether she failed to speak out against it. Speaker Pelosi has said that during a classified briefing in 2002, an array of possible techniques was discussed by the CIA, but that none was presented as taking place at that time. Quote, "We were not, I repeat, we were not told that waterboarding or any of these other enhanced interrogation methods were used." She made a similar point to Rachel.
The inference to be drawn from what they told us was these are things that we think could be legal, and we have a difference of opinion on that. But they never told us that they were being used, because that would be a different story altogether.
So, right-wing blogs and Fox News, a right-wing blog that's on TV, jumped all over today's headline from the Washington Post and a similar one from ABC News Online. Quote, "Memo says Pelosi knew about use of harsh tactics." But the essence of the story is that, quote, "the ranking member and chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, respectively Pelosi and then Representative Porter Goss, were briefed September 4th, 2002 on EITs, enhanced interrogation techniques." Since that did not necessarily contradict what Speaker Pelosi has claimed, no surprise that her office today released a statement saying as much, which reads in part, "Of the 40 CIA briefings to Congress reported recently in the press, I was only briefed once. On September 4, 2002, as I have previously stated, I was briefed on interrogation techniques the administration was considering using in the future." And the CIA spokesman, Paul Gimigliano, has confirmed that none of the notes and memos on torture specified that Speaker Pelosi had been briefed on the use of waterboarding. That's according to Greg Sargent of the Plumline.com. Let's call in the senior national security and intelligence correspondent with the McClatchy newspapers, Jonathan Landay. Jonathan, good evening.
My pleasure to be here again.
We'll get into some of those details in a moment, but how did a story that Speaker Pelosi was briefed on some enhanced interrogation techniques, which she'd already acknowledged, get treated as if this was new and or contradictory information?
Well, this, of course, is a major political issue. At least the Republicans are trying to build it into one. And of course, in the political hothouse that surrounds the whole issue of torture and the interrogation techniques that were used by the Bush administration, it's getting traction. And of course, there is a legitimate political question as to whether or not and when Speaker Pelosi knew what was going on. But I think that this is a minor issue. I think that this is all detracting from the real major issue. Look, last time I checked, there's no political, no international law, no U.S. law against forgetting or misleading or mixing up dates, etc., etc. But there's the Geneva Conventions, there's U.S. laws, there's the International Convention Against Torture, and those bar the use of torture, and that's where the real issue lies here. The real issue is there are two. The first is, were the techniques that were used by the Bush administration legal? And second of all, did they produce intelligence that prevented attacks on the United States? That's where the focus of all of this should really be.
Now, there are details about that briefing in September 2002 that may be worth pursuing on their own. For instance, that the techniques were used specifically relating to Abu Zubaydah. Those were discussed, and since Abu Zubaydah was in fact waterboarded, perhaps that was discussed in the classified briefing in relationship to him. But can that leap really be made without more information? Is that a leap that can be made with the information that's on the table right now?
Well, there's the other information on the table is indeed this cover letter that came from the CIA director, who says, well, we're not sure that all of this material that we have in this memo is accurate. And therefore, yes, perhaps this could be examined as part of, as I said earlier, a larger investigation, a larger inquiry into the entire circumstances surrounding the use of these methods.
Another issue, and this too has been mentioned by the Speaker, is that even now she is legally limited as what she can disclose about any classified briefing. And is that not hampering the ability of anybody to truly air this out, this who knew what when?
Well, I would think so. I mean, there are U.S. laws against disclosure of classified information. She was bound by those laws, as was everybody who knew about these techniques. And so that raises the question. I mean, the Republicans are saying, well, this proves that she knew about it and didn't go out and try and stop it. But my response, and the response of other people, is, well, she couldn't, A, because this was classified. She wasn't allowed to speak about it publicly. And she could talk about it in channels to people who had clearances. And I think there's the suggestion has been made that, well, she could have taken this all the way up to the White House, where I think the response would have been, but the lawyers at the Justice Department and at the CIA say these are legal, and therefore we're not sure why you're complaining, and we're going to continue with this.
When somebody like the Republican Congressman Peter Hoekstra, who is the ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee, suggests that if there's a truth commission, it should begin by looking into what Congress knew, should Democrats consider calling his bluff?
Well, I think Speaker Pelosi is among the leading voices on Capitol Hill for the creation of a commission, something that indeed even the Obama administration right now seems to be dragging its feet on. And indeed, that's a legitimate question to ask. What did Congress know? When did they know it? But again, these are questions that should be asked, but they detract from the major questions, the two major questions. The first is, were these techniques legal? And the second is, did they obtain information that prevented attacks on the United States? And the only way we're going to get to the bottom of that is if there is indeed some kind of commission of inquiry.
Jonathan Lande,